a ground-up convening. So really appreciate this, but you've got to bridge this distance. We can't do it alone, and that's crucial, and I'll address that in a minute. What is the second thing we need to do? We need to understand that scale, we're just talking about action, scale is your enemy as it is your friend. That simply means that the climate crisis is only growing. Now, when I say that, it means global emissions, because climate is connection. It is an ecosystem that can't be disconnected by geopolitical borders. So when that's growing, what does that mean? Your emissions are growing, not Pakistan's, probably Pakistan's, who knows, but also internationally. So globally, despite commitments from Paris to now, the Paris Conference 2015-16 to today, that we will keep emissions or stabilize global emissions of greenhouse gases at 1.5 above the pre-industrial revolution, that will enable us to chart, humanity as a whole, to chart a trajectory. Well, that's in total crisis, as you know. That's called keeping 1.5 alive. Well, like many multilateral goals, including SDGs, it's in ICU. It's on a ventilator because there just isn't enough international, global, and multilateral commitment. In any case, we can debate this otherwise. Multilateralism itself is, and the world order after the Second World War is itself in its very, frankly, last gasps, and I hope it is able to revive itself. But part of that is the international climate commitment. So that's also receded, as has our commitment. The emissions are carrying on. Countries make national choices. They seek energy, and they seek cheap energy. And now the Global South is often asking, very legitimately, frankly, that, you know, the Global North, which eats up 70% of international financing, even today, has made its outcomes, its wealth on the back of cheap energy. And that emitted in the atmosphere, given the systems, the ocean currents, which are crucial also, and the atmosphere, we are now trapped in a cloak of greenhouse gases going up, up, up. Because the Global South says, are we not entitled to our own, generating our own wealth? Wealth is this equal to energy. You can't generate wealth as a nation or as a state without energy. But, you know, Pakistan has potential solutions. One of them being we are very able to harness the power of renewable energy, particularly you've all heard about the rooftop solar revolution in Pakistan and how 50% of our energy is almost undocumented, but it is renewable. So people are seeking cheaper energy, which means cleaner energy. That sounds like a win-win, right? But I mean, there are issues with legacy industries, oil, and obviously fossil fuels that drive your base load still coming in and your grid. So moving away from that, the net result is global heat is growing. It should have been coming down by now. It's going like this. And that signals clear and present risk. For Pakistan, you are number one now. Every meeting or every other meeting should be either indexed with climate action, it should close with what are the impacts on the environment and the climate on this, how shall we safeguard it, what is the budget for it. That's how it should be happening. But it's not. You saw a budget where the ministry's funds were cut. You saw, I see the PMD sitting here. They're in need of deep modernization and radical modernization because they depend entirely, their early warning depends entirely on science and new technology. When I came into the ministry, a huge grant was lapsing. A huge World Bank, rather loan was lapsing. There are no grants anymore. They're very rare and far between. So an international loan was lapsing. We tried to grab it and assure movement forward. Anyway, long story short, what catastrophe did to us was repurpose all funds that were meant to plow in resilience, in building your adaptation. What gets hit first? Climate funds. There's a letter, you have to, because you've got to save lives. You're on a front line, and when you have to save lives, that's where it goes. There can be no argument. And when we're coming to saving lives, back to the scale issue. The scale is growing. The emission scale is growing. The heating scale is growing. And the impacts are all over the world. They're beginning to be felt. Now, what we saw in 2022, if you put on your social media, you'll see many reels showing you what in one day goes on in different countries. And mostly you see catastrophic flooding. So I just brought the New York Times today, egregiously underrepresented on just geopolitics, of course, in its reporting. But today it talked about the Texas flood. The Texas flood was huge. I don't know if you noticed, it was nothing like Pakistan's 2022, which flooded 1/3 of the country. But here, 92 lives have been lost, and they are unable to even say why the weather service was short-staffed. So even in one of the richest communities of the world, the weather service, as floods hit, weather service was short-staffed. Here you go. There were many blank posts, missing, not appointed, not a priority. What does that tell you? Does that sound familiar? It does, doesn't it? It happened in Swat. There was a Swat tragedy. The alerts were clearly there. I remember intervening, but they were not at the kind of scale needed. The NDMA was agitated enough to issue the alerts to the province. The province, I guess, didn't take it as seriously as possible. It was a pro forma response. Pro forma responses cannot work anymore. They don't. Even Section 144 in a province no longer keeps desperate tourists at bay who are looking for, it's a big population, they're looking for some respite from the heat, which is growing and growing. I mean, you're one of the hottest places on the planet. Again, no realization of that. 50 degrees plus. Europe, just for perspective, Europe is at emergency at 40. At 40 degrees, Europe goes into emergency. You're casually at 50 from the city I've come from. And so this goes on. And the scale of the response is crucial because, it filtered down. The right noises were made. From the center, warned, okay, Nietzsche, what happened at the ground? It was a tragedy foretold. And that was a river where many of the people tragically did not come back from. The river of no return. That should not be the case. But I still want to tell you that globally, when the water comes down this hard in accelerated quantities in an accelerated timeline, then weather services, alert services, rescue services all over the world fail. Human beings are not ready for the scale and might of the climate crisis that is already in our way. It's coming our way, it's here. It's here and now. So the third priority, and I'm saying scale because scale matters. Whether you are bringing in an agriculture project or food security, water conservation, scale is critical. There will be constant conversations that there is no financing available for scale because internationally it's not. And that's a whole different conversation. I'm happy to have another day, and I'm sure other people will be unpacking it. But that's just not going to be available. No one, I keep saying, no one is coming for you. Keep making the argument. That's your job. That's certainly the federal ministry's job. But don't expect for the house that is burning in your yard, don't expect that fire to be put out by anyone else. You will have to put out that fire while figuring out how to prevent the next one. That's really the essence of this whole. I've cut out all the jargon because sometimes that distances people. So that's what's going on here. I think a great deal of Pakistanis understand that now. But it's a huge population from decision maker to community actor. The third point is the links are broken. The links are broken because they were never made for climate and environmental tragedy or resilience. And what does that mean? It means when there is a crisis, the dots can't be connected. Even within a province, the actors who are supposed to rescue, search, act, find that they are unable to connect or decide even who is responsible. Now that's just not going to take you into the 21st century's polycrisis. These tragedies will keep occurring, and we will be asking each other who was responsible. That is still going on, okay? And you can't have, say, a rescue service showing up confused about what to do, because that's what's happened. And there are many actors who are to blame, and that this is going on everywhere. But this particular tragedy is a metaphor for how we all got it wrong. And I'm taking collective responsibility here, which I don't need to because I've been shouting about this for a long time. So early warning at scale is actually a human right as defined by the United Nations. The Secretary General every year has a special session on early warning. And people say, early warning, oh well, you know, Met offices can get their act together. There's a science to it. There's a science to it, but the scale of the calamities coming your way need scale, they need attention, they need focus, and they need obviously financing. But moving down to connecting the dots, I appreciate this conference because it is seeking to break past working in silos, which is a South Asian pastime that we've all invested in. I'm going to work in my silo. I'm not going to connect to government. It's boring, it's difficult. There are so many invisible barriers. Forget it, I'll do better in my private sector space. The same with government. Oh, for God's sake, why reach out to them? We'll go to one NGO and a community actor, take the dots and move on. That's not how it's going to work. Your electric vehicle, anything you take, electric vehicles, any vector, there's so many. Your glaciers are melting. You're, in the middle of summer, April, you get tennis ball hail. I mean, it's huge. One nearly hit my head. Because I wasn't expecting it. None of you were, right? So you have completely unpredictable weather as a symptom of climate stress. You have to deal with both. The weather warnings are crucial. That's why I got this app, the Weather Wale one, and it at least alerted me to rainfall when I was in Karachi in my Islamabad home. Still couldn't prevent the flooding, but anyway, it's an appreciated thing. So in all of this, if you see scale, silos, all of it, it's a whole of country response that is needed. Like a fist, if you close it, it'll work. If you don't, the water will run right through. So, don't try to eat soup with a fork. Make it a spoon, please. Which means it's a whole of country. Every single person here is an actor. If they're educated, which given the privilege naturally embodied in the room, means you can all be counters of your carbon footprint. You can, more important than that, is you can be counters of your water usage. If there is one crisis you can identify for Pakistan as a top priority, it is water. And water, whether it is in excess or it is in drought, it is in deficit, is your frontline crisis. It defines how we live. It is crucial to our food security. I mean, the agriculture sector uses up at least 90% of Pakistan's water, ground as well as surface. So we have a real problem with 2025 making us water scarce, as the UN says. Do we even realize it? We are technically water scarce in many areas of the country, at least half the country. Balochistan is brown. Even Chitral is brown. Have you been there recently? Chitral is brown. It used to be green, verdant, lush. It's brown. It's baking in the summer. And obviously, Sindh, the delta is dry half the time. And we sit here and fantasize about, big storage dams. Big storage dams are no longer a thing in the world. It is harvesting water as it comes down, community by community, pond by pond. And you have what is known as a fantastic recipe for public-private coordination and collaboration and path forward. It's called the Living Indus program. We put it together with the UNEP and some other agencies. It's brilliant. It caters for low investment plans for businesses to invest in, for development international partners to invest in, as well as big PSDP options. But there's very little PSDP given to rainwater harvesting, which is critical. Even households need it now. And it's low cost compared to the big dams, which we need to complete since we've started them. But they have tremendous runoff costs. They become long gestation projects. I believe Dasu is being completed by 27. It's a hydro project. I hope it's fast-tracked. We do need to, because we have an upper riparian that is being extremely predatory. And that predation is weaponizing water, which does not happen anywhere in the world. And I believe that if you weaponize my water, someone will weaponize yours. That's how the world works. What goes around literally comes around, and that's a complete adage for the climate crisis. What you're doing in your backyard will impact even you, let alone your children. What they eat, how organic it is, how many chemicals are in it, what is the toxins that it is releasing or embedding. All of that will impact your health, what you're breathing. I mean, Lahore is now facing every 4 or 5 months what I call a serial killer. That's the smog crisis. And that's entirely local action based. You don't need anybody, because nobody generated that fog. Your vehicles, your cement factories, your steel factories, your brick kilns, and obviously the crop burning, they've done it. And you can regulate and govern your way out of it. So climate and environmental and pollution governance is in our hands. That's the 5th point. And we need to make sure and hold each other as well as governments accountable, create avenues for social and other audits for this, ask where the money is going. Frankly, it's not, because there is no capacity. The real heart of the problem, the worm at the center of our governance crisis, is the capacity to utilize funds. So there'll be funds, they don't get utilized. Why was the climate ministry's funds cut? I asked. I was in serious outrage, because I was always in need of expending that, and I was told because it was unspent. Much of it was unspent. Well, I mean, the answer is not cutting it, not the slash and burn. The answer is enabling it. at least have a meeting as to how we can enable why this ministry is no longer able to spend money. It's the top ministry that has to face 26 international treaties and provide intellectual heft, scientific heft at every meeting to fight Pakistan's case in 1 year. It has to also generate your climate financing, which is crucial. And just this work is enough to generate some commitment and clear political will to connect these dots, to enable much higher capacity, and to identify that capacity. So there are enough people in Pakistan that can come in, and those are all the young median demographic that is in local universities. It's amazing the work they're doing. Absolutely incredible. The research, the local, the university, all of them, from Sindh University, believe it or not, to NUST over here. Great work going on. These children will need jobs and mainstreaming, not just in the climate discourse, but the climate action space. Government cannot employ everyone. There need to be many more organizations, such as these two, that connect those dots, that give them the space, that don't struggle for funding, because that's the real struggle. The funding is the struggle. I run a think tank. Ask me to make a switch to climate is very difficult. And I'm also very careful because I don't like conflict of interest issues cropping up. But it's crucial for those spaces to be generated credibly and with outreach. And this today should be a template for the strategic communication that is constantly needed for saving our country. Because it's either calamity or action. There is no middle ground. Please understand this. The crises will keep coming. We'll continue to be shocked and pained and pray for all those who are impacted, but these will not stop. You may have one good year, but look at the map of Pakistan and you will see everywhere that there are serial impacts with barely a little respite. So it's coming. There's no middle ground. Make the decision. Ask yourselves, how much water can I save today? Even households can. We're one of the largest per capita users of water, by the way, consumers of water, 4th in the world. Please stop. Please stop your people throwing water in the car wash. It's amazing how much that can be saved. I've become the scourge of the neighborhoods, walking in the morning and telling everyone they're tired of it. But I want you all to do it. Be the conscientious citizens. And then we hope that people will start listening. Thank you very much for your time.